Hello and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. I'm Renee Williams and I'm here with my co-host Billy Thomas, and we both work in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of Kentucky, and we greatly appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah, no doubt. Whether you're joining us via Zoom or if you're being with us via Facebook Live, we're delighted to have you with us. You can interact with us via the chat pod in Zoom or in the comment section on Facebook Live. We've got several great presenters here today. We're going to be talking about something that a lot of people have heard about, but may have not actually seen before in the woods, in ginseng. And we've got a nice video from some of our team on that. Also bringing in some folks from horticulture and from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture to help out on that one. And then we're going to look at a Christmas tree farm, and we're going to be talking about the Kentucky Christmas Tree Association and kind of let you know about them and what's going on with the latest given the COVID situation. And then we're going to wrap it up with one of our regular features, the Tree of the Week. So another great show, Renee, and I'm just delighted to be here with you and all our viewers today.
Yes, again, remember, if you have any questions during the presentations, type them in the chat pod. And if you just want to see this again, you can always go to fromthewoodstoday.com and see it all again. But let's get started. So we have, first up, we have American Ginseng. Tell us a little bit about the segment.
Great. So I want to introduce Megan Bueland, who's been working with us for a little while now, and many of you already know her. But this is an area of interest for her, as well as many other non-timber forest products. So the many things that we get from our woods that aren't wood. And I think ginseng's a real good example of that. So Megan, you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to see today and what you did?
Sure. So a couple months back, we went to a location in eastern Kentucky where we were invited out to take a look at American ginseng growing on property. And we met with some folks from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture and Horticulture Extension here at UK, as long as the folks from Forestry, to look at American ginseng and to learn about proper harvesting and some of the rules and regulations around ginseng harvesting and growth here in Kentucky. And we put together a little bit of a video documenting what we saw. This is a shorter video that we're showing you today. If you would like more detailed information, we also have a longer, more detailed video on the topic that is available if that's something that anyone is interested in seeing.
Wonderful.
I'm sure it will be, Megan. This is a topic that a lot of people have interest in and a lot of curiosity about. So I guess without any further ado, I'll go ahead and share the video you all prepared today. And thank you very much for it.
Thanks, Billy.
American ginseng, Panax quinquefolius, is an herbaceous perennial plant native to North America. Ranging from northern Canada, south to Louisiana, and as far west as Nebraska and the Dakotas, ginseng was once common and plentiful throughout this range. Unfortunately, due to overharvesting and poaching, ginseng is now far less common throughout its native range and is listed under Appendix 2 of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. This designation means that, although American ginseng is not currently threatened with extinction, it might become so in the future unless harvesting and trade is moderated through a conservation-based approach. The University of Kentucky recently took a trip to eastern Kentucky to locate and film American ginseng. Here, Sean Wright, an extension specialist with the UK Horticulture Department, shares with us the history, ecology, conservation, and proper legal channels for harvesting and sale of American ginseng.
In the history of ginseng in the United States, the Jesuit priests that came over to the colonies in the early 1700s, late 1600s, they were searching around and they found these ginseng plants that resembled the Asian ginseng and began export back to Asia, selling it there. In the early 1700s, we have records of it going back. As far as major exporters, Daniel Boone, our Kentucky resident, was one of the major exporters. He once had an order for several thousand pounds of ginseng and lost it when the barge sunk and was able to replace that order just by sending out more people to dig ginseng in Kentucky. So it was once highly abundant, has become much more rare across the state of Kentucky. Here we have two plants right here. It's full, so there's some nice ripe berries on here. The berries are very important. You want to harvest ginseng that is a mature berry producing plant, not something that's too young. As you can see on this plant right here, there are 3 prongs coming off of the main stem that comes off the neck of the plant. There's 3 prongs that are composed of individual leaflets. On a mature prong, there are 5 separate leaflets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This prong has lost some individual leaflets. On this younger plant, there's only 2 prongs. It did produce some berries, but this leaflet has 5 leaflets. This younger leaflet only has 4. So that's how you can tell the difference in the number of leaflets on the individual plants. Okay, we found a nice 4-prong plant here, and we're going to start scraping back the soil and see, counting the neck scars and things. And now let's just start scraping away.
If you would like to learn more about American ginseng cultivation, collection, and regulation in Kentucky, there are a variety of resources available to help. Ginseng harvest in Kentucky is subject to an established time period of September 1st to December 1st. Due to decreasing ginseng populations, the Daniel Boone National Forest has temporarily suspended the issue of ginseng harvesting permits, and harvest of ginseng on the Daniel Boone is not permitted. The University of Kentucky Center for Crop Diversification has published a fact sheet on marketing considerations and production of ginseng in Kentucky. Additionally, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture oversees and regulates the harvest of ginseng in Kentucky. More information can be found on the KDA website. Responsible harvesting and management of American ginseng populations will ensure that this native species can be found in Kentucky forests and woodlands for many years to come.
If all of your guests want to pop on, Sean and Anna, I believe, are on. We can talk to them a little bit about ginseng. And could you tell me, so is it illegal to dig ginseng if you find it, or what is exactly the parameters, or can you buy it and then start planting in your own yard? How does that work?
Sure. So Anna Lucio is with us today, and she's with the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, and she has a lot of the information available on the proper regulations and rules surrounding ginseng in Kentucky. So I'm going to defer to her to clear this up for us.
So Kentucky Department of Ag is the administrative agency that regulates American ginseng harvests in Kentucky. These rules go state to state. So everything we talk about today is, of course, just going to be for our Commonwealth. So it's important that you look and check for that, because in some states it's forestry, some states it's their DNR. So in Kentucky, it's here at the Kentucky Department of Ag. And so, you know, typically what we're talking about is natural populations that are in the woods. the property that we showed in the video had been in the family for many, many generations. And they hadn't really harvested and done a lot. They may put the berries back each fall, but they just took care of it and just left it out to let it grow over the years. And that's what we would call wild ginseng. And so you can legally harvest it, but it has to be in that season. And that season is just to get the chance for the berries to mature and be able to put back to have the germination, the highest germination rate we can do. And why that's important is because ginseng takes a long time to grow. Most crops, when we talk about in agriculture, we're looking at something that has a 90 to 170 days to come to maturity, one season, an annual, right? Except for forestry, we talk about the trees. Well, ginseng is like that. It takes just as long as the trees to have a mature crop. You know, that seed that you put in the ground this fall, it will take at least 2 years to germinate if it's not what's called stratified. And then it's going to take at least 5 to 7 years just to be able to be mature enough to be legal age. But if you want to talk about top dollar, you're talking 10, 15, 20 years. And ideally what we're looking at is a ginseng plant that is reproductive and that is growing berries. And that can be from 10 to 17 years from the research. So it's a long answer for a very complicated, but that's why we have these stewardship and the rules on there.
That does make sense. So can you buy ginseng and plant it yourself?
Well, that's a good question. You know, right now, the only way you can buy and sell rootlets would have to be at least 5 years of age. And they would have to have 4 neck scars on there. And basically, you have to make sure it's got enough growth on there to be legal. And in Kentucky, the legal age is 5 years or older. And so a lot of times you'll have little bitty roots that come out that are 5 years older. And that's the kind that you need to be transplanting back. Right now, we do not have legal seeds. So the best way to increase the ginseng population on your own property is if you have a natural population is simply by going back and doing stewardship of planting those berries and getting soil contact. You want to get it before the chipmunks, before the turkeys and other things. And just putting that soil contact with those seeds is going to help your germination rate a lot. And if you look at the longer video that Megan's put together on the UK website, it's fantastic because we go in and illustrate a good way to go in and plant those berries for future population.
Wonderful.
You know, one thing I like about this segment here is it kind of originated from one of our county extension agents. Reed Graham had reached out to us in Breathitt County, and you know, he was talking about that. So I'd like to give a shout out to Reed and you know, the Breathitt County Extension Office for their contributions to this, as well as Sean Wright, who's down at RCAR. So
I see a question that's come through about stratifying the berries. So University of Kentucky was actually one of the first universities out there post-Civil War to do ginseng research. So this isn't something new. This is not fashionable. I mean, we're talking 300 years of history in the United States of ginseng harvest. So I do a lot to kind of see what the policies were of old, so we can kind of see where we need to go and what's happened. So one of the questions is what stratifies the berries? And so there's a lot of research, even at UK has done over the years, of seed research from corn, soybeans, wheat. We know wheat has to have a cold period before to break that dormancy. But ginseng also has to break its dormancy. And one way it does that is to have 2 cold cycles. So that's what that stratification is called, is just to give it, and I don't know the specific temperatures, I'd have to look them up. I don't know if Sean remembers those offhand, but there's not a lot of research out there. There's a lot of folklore. The science is really lacking. And that's one thing we try to do is to bring the science. And that's where that mystique comes from a lot about this plant.
Can you tell us a little bit of what ginseng is used for?
Well, I have some examples. So it can be used in teas. These little tea bags that you can consume it. It can be in confections, that candy. I know it's kind of hard to see on there. This is actually really yummy. It's a Korean product rather than American. Capsules, you can take it as a supplement, as it is a powder ground, or as this black one actually has American ginseng, Panax ginseng, and what's colloquial called Siberian ginseng. I don't know the Latin name of it. It's also as an extract that you can take it as a tincture that you can do, and you can make your own tinctures. As you see the little bottles over my shoulder, they're all in alcohol. And what's really cool is that those plants you saw held up in the video, this is one of those from that day. We carefully made sure the top stayed on it. And I brought that root and the top and put it in a half-gallon mason jar with legal pure grain alcohol. So, but yes, and it can actually be used as a root as itself, either sliced or, so one thing I talked about when we've done seminars before is early on when I was doing this program, this is my 13th season working with American Ginseng for Kentucky, is that, okay, well, how do you use it? You know, these are lessons that other people taught me, and we give this folklore back out through webinars like this. And what was really cool is that some Korean community members who said, now, Anna, you eat chicken noodle soup, right? You're from Kentucky. You cook yourself. And so, yeah, so one thing is ginseng Korean chicken. So we think of our chicken noodle soup that we use for healing and whatever. We take a whole chicken, you do your aromatics, you know, celery, carrots, onions, a bay leaf, and the spices. But then you also can put a fresh ginseng root in that. And that'll also give that kind of healing power in the medicinals that comes out. And so that's another question is like, does ginseng have bona fide properties? Well, there are chemical compounds that Western science has identified as gisenticides and saponins that are in the root. And there's still research being done to see what those activities, what those chemicals will do and whether they do provide a healing or not, or is it just something that tastes good like you would get in your garden otherwise?
All right. Well, thank you very much for you both being on today and talking about ginseng. And Megan, we greatly appreciate you joining us again as well.
Oh, thank you for having the segment on today. And I did want to point out also that, you know, there is a lot of interest in American ginseng for medicinal properties, and there are a lot of interesting medicinal plants that are native here in Kentucky. And we do have Sean Wright with us today also, and he is a horticulture extension specialist here at UK. And one of the areas that he focuses on is medicinal herbs here in Kentucky. So Sean is an amazing resource that we have right here at UK for a lot of your questions related to native Kentucky plants that have medicinal properties, as well as other aspects of horticulture.
Feel free to contact me. My email is simply Shawn, SHAWN .wright, WRIGHT @uky.edu. Easiest way to get a hold of me or contact your county extension agent and they can give you my contact information as well. Hope all our participants in here know their county agents and are signed up on their newsletter lists and things so they know what's going on. Again, really appreciate Anna's input, and you did a great job there, Megan, on the video. It's a lot of really good information. So lots of good resources out there. We're available to help you out. Just feel free to contact us.
Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, I think that's always the number one thing to let people know is where to start. And I think that's one good thing that we've taught them through this segment is where to start.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'll echo what Sean said. You know, our local county extension offices are just a wealth of information and resources for their community. So get involved and get to know them. It'll serve you well for sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, again, thank you all for this great segment. We greatly appreciate it. And I know our viewers did as well. And I'm sure they'll be checking out your longer video as well, Megan. So thank you all much. All right, Renee, kind of switching gears a little bit. We're going to be talking about Christmas trees now. We're coming on the Christmas
It's the season.
Getting close to it. I know we still got Thanksgiving next week, but Christmas is rolling around before we know it. And we had a chance to visit last week Dr. Herb Lloyd. And Herb Lloyd is a Christmas tree farmer. His family's a Christmas tree farm in Fleming County. And went up there with Dr. Jacob Muller. And Jacob helped film a really nice video that we're going to share. And then we'll be meeting some of the representatives from the Kentucky Christmas Tree Association as well as Dr. Lloyd, because he's actually the Tree Farmer of the Year that we're going to be talking about. So Jacob, I think you did a great video. I really appreciate your work on that, and I'm looking forward to showing the group.
Yeah, thanks, Billy. I think we had such a great day out there and couldn't have asked for better fall weather. And so yeah, hope everybody enjoys the video.
Okay. And I will tell you, folks, you believe it or not, we have 25 to 30 million Christmas trees are sold each year in the United States. You know,
Wow.
Yeah. They estimate that there's more than 350 million Christmas trees growing. So there's a lot. And the other thing I will say, 80% of all artificial Christmas trees come from China. So this, buying real Christmas trees from Kentucky tree farmers is a great way to support our local communities and, and be part. And there's really no replacement for a real Christmas tree. So Jacob and Renee, I'm going to go ahead and share this great video.
All right, sounds great.
So my name is Herb Lloyd. I've been the person who started growing Christmas trees here back in 82, 83 with a lot of advice from the then forester by the name of Pete Kowalik at the University of Kentucky. When we originally started, we had this whole area was full of Christmas trees, but we've since learned that there's difficulty with growing that many Christmas trees and moving them to market, and that it's very fine, a very narrow profit margin, if at all. So eventually the farm has evolved to where we're choose and cut, and that means that people come out and find their tree. They cut it, they bring it to the office, normally to the area where we process the tree by shaking the needles out of it and by baling the tree so that they then can put it on the top of their car or in their or sticking out from the back of their trunk very easily, since it's no loose ends. So that's been our model in the past, and it's worked very well. The Christmas tree portion has been taken over by my children, Tara Lloyd, Haley Lloyd, and Park Lloyd. And for the last 4 years now, they've been running it. They've been running the business, and right-sizing it was the big thing they did to fit the needs of the customers that we had at the point in time they took over. Unfortunately, we have COVID this year. It's creating a number of restrictions, so I'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I want to talk about and sort of show an example of the trees that we have. The varieties have evolved over time. Whereas we grew a lot of Scotch pine to start off with, we tend to grow white pine and Norway spruce now. And you can see that they generally do very well. You see one dead white pine there. That's going to happen. From time to time you'll lose a tree. But these have generally done very well. And so our customers who come out here are interested in those. I'm going to take you to another section right beside me here to show you some of the problems that Christmas tree growers have, so that you'll have some empathy and sympathy for Christmas tree growers. So we'll move over to this section right here. Okay, so in this little section I want to try to show that it's not all peaches and cream. A lot of people come out and they thought, this is beautiful to try to grow Christmas trees out in a setting like this. You must really enjoy it. And I say, yes, I really do enjoy it. And they say, well, we'd like to grow Christmas trees. Can you show us how to do it and what's involved? And I said, well, first of all, you have to answer one personal question. And the personal question is, are you going to live in Kentucky for the rest of your life? And they say, what? What do you mean? How can that be? I said, well, you can't start an operation like this without being present all the time. You can't have other people be doing this for you. It just doesn't work very well. So it takes about 7 to 8 years from the time you plant the tree or start preparing the field until you get it to market. It can take even longer. So you have to know, you have to be committed to staying where you start. And if you can't make that commitment, then all the rest of it is irrelevant. And so I can teach you how to grow the Christmas trees, but it won't do you any good. And then the other part of the part that is not all peaches and cream is what happens to a lot of trees sometimes. So we'll take a look at these trees right here. These are Scotch pine. Scotch pine, just as a refresher, is not a native tree to America, nor is it a native tree to Kentucky. The trees come actually from Europe. That's where the seed sources come. And in some cases, more northernly, they do very well. But in Kentucky, they don't do well. They tend to have short half-lives or lifetimes, and they also get a disease. You can see that these trees have diseases at the bottom. Some of them are okay. It's a fungus, It can only be controlled by, it can't be controlled very well, to tell the truth, in Kentucky, but you can spray herbicides, but they're, from the health standpoint, or not herbicides, I'm sorry, pesticides, but they are dangerous to your health, and you have to be very careful with them, so we never chose that route. The first round of trees you may do okay on, but the second round, the fungus is going to be in the soil, and it's going to cause death like you're seeing here. So the sales advice would be to try to take the tops of these trees, sell as many of them as you can this year. Try to deal with the disease in that way, realizing you're not going to beat it. I just want to point this out because it's one example of how it's not all peaches and cream.
Thank you for that video. We greatly appreciate you all doing that. It was a really nice video about that.
You know, it was really fun to get out there and meet Dr. Lloyd. And there's Dr. Lloyd. Hey, Dr. Lloyd, how are you this morning?
I'm fine. How are you guys? Thanks for doing all this.
Thank you for doing that. We greatly appreciate it. And congratulations, I hear.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate that also. You're talking about the Tree Farmer Award?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a real honor. I'm very grateful for it.
You know, Dr. Lloyd, we're excited to have you as the Tree Farmer of the Year as well, and joining us. And I want to let folks know that on December 15th at noon, we're going to have the virtual Tree Farmer of the Year field day. So you'll get a chance to see more of Dr. Lloyd's farm and a lot of the work that he's done. But, you know, Jacob, I was thinking that some people may equate a Christmas tree farm with a tree farm. And here in the U.S. and in Kentucky, they kind of have different meanings a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that's when we had the chance to go out to Dr. Lloyd's farm, he really showed us how diverse a tree farm really could be, and having the Christmas tree is just one component of that, along with a whole suite of other forest operations. And I don't know if Dr. Lloyd would like to speak to that a little bit and kind of put the tree farm in context with the Christmas trees and as being kind of just a component of that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, in our case, I would tend to think of it as product lines, and so on our property, we have the product line, of course, of Christmas trees. But really, the major producer for the farm is timber. Our timber income and commercial sales bring in more money than the Christmas trees do. So that would put it in perspective somewhat. But then there's also other things with the combination that if people are thinking about doing this type of thing, that they can think about. Of course, we listened to ginseng this morning. I wouldn't think that would be a major product line for us. But we in the forest, there are alternative products in addition to the commercial timber. We try to promote the wildlife. We have a hunting lease on the property, so we promote that. We tend to promote the watershed. The farm has almost a complete watershed on it for a small intermittent stream. So that is nice to think that we can contribute to the ecology in that way and to watershed protection. The Christmas tree farm also brings in some other aspects over and above of Christmas trees. You can try to sell to the markets, to the commercial markets. It becomes difficult because the profit margins are so small, particularly in Kentucky where we have a lot of disease. But there's other. Dale may want to comment on something along those lines. But we also use the venue for events. We have some weddings in the barn that you saw. It hasn't been very good during the COVID period of time, but otherwise we usually have 4 or 5 weddings a year. People like the rustic nature of the old tobacco barn. We also have other events such as outside of COVID. There's usually or in the non-COVID times, there's usually an annual race on the farm. It's called the Hot 100, where people come out in August and get hot and sweaty running the hillside trails. We also have recreation as a potential. We also have a lake on the property that allows us to offer a fishing club. So people join the fishing club, and with the money that they pay, we're able to keep up the lake and to put some grass carp in it every year, and maintain the edges, the lake edges, and to maintain the access road and those types of things. So that's also fun and useful. So those are just some additional thoughts that I might throw out there.
Yeah, I think your farm, your tree farm, is a great example of just the wide diversity of things that we can do in a woodland property, in a woodland setting. And I am so looking forward to our virtual Tree Farm of the Year Field Day event. Again, that's going to be a free event for everybody on December 15th at noon. And you'll get to see a lot of these different practices. And Dr. Lloyd has worked with a lot of different folks over the years, natural resource professionals from the Kentucky Division of Forestry, as well as Fish and Wildlife, consultant foresters, and others. And it's just really a great example. So Dr. Lloyd, on behalf of the Kentucky Tree Farm Committee, which I happen to be a member of, we just want to congratulate you again and thank you for all of your hard work and really being such a great steward of the land.
Well, thank you, Billy. But you know, I would like to make an offer to the people who are listening. Anybody who wants to put together a visit with 3 or 4 people. We have to be careful during COVID times, of course, but I'm always happy to entertain focused questions and to show people around. So it just takes some organizational work to do it, but it's there, and I like to share it when people have an interest.
Yeah, I was going to say, you certainly got a lot to show, and you got a lot of experience in this. So it's really great. I appreciate that. You know, we do have a couple representatives with us today from the Kentucky Christmas Tree Association. And I know, Dr. Lloyd, you've been involved with that in the past. But we have Dell and Elizabeth, if they want to bring up their cameras and microphones. Well, hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Dell. Thank you all for joining us.
Hello.
So you all are really helping us kind of spread the word about Kentucky Christmas tree growers here in the state. So thank you for joining us today. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So I guess, how do you see COVID changing the way things are going to operate this year?
For us in particular, we've always been first come, first curve on our choose and cut tree operation. This year we went to a reservation system, which has done really well, a whole lot better than I ever expected. Just getting the word out on Facebook, the internet, all the areas that we could. And we've already got over 900 trees reserved to be cut on Thanksgiving weekend.
Wow.
At an average of about 40 trees in an hour. So hopefully we can spread we've been doing that over the last several years, similar numbers, but we would get 200 come at a time. So hopefully we've spread them out well enough to satisfy our COVID problems and then our crowd control problems that we've had in the past. That's always been an issue with us. So Elizabeth, are you doing anything for COVID?
I'm not really doing anything different other than, you know, I've spread out where my trees are at as far as my pre-cut trees, temperature checks, masks and stuff for my workers. But as far as a reservation system, I didn't do one of those this year. We'll just see how it goes.
You know, Elizabeth and Dale, could you tell us a little bit about each of your operations, you know, kind of where they're at, how big they are, how long you've been in business, and maybe some of the species you grow? I know Dr. Lloyd mentioned some of the species he grow. I don't know if you're growing the same ones or some different ones.
Go ahead, Dale.
Okay. For us, we started in 95, planted our first trees in 95, sold our first trees in 02. We started off with Scotch pine and white pine. Now I don't have a Scotch pine on the place, thank goodness. But we raised mainly Canaan fir, white pine, Norway spruce, a few Douglas fir. I've tried things, a few other varieties, but those are the Canaan fir is probably our biggest seller and best seller. As far as size goes, we've probably got about 12 acres planted in trees, about about 1,000 trees to an acre. We'll sell in the neighborhood of 800-900 trees, just depending on how many we have available for that year. Try not to oversell so we can stay open every year. And people tend to think we have an endless supply of trees. We ought to be selling until Christmas Eve every year, but that's not the way it works.
So how much work does it take to keep those trees shaped up?
Well, it's there. I mean, there's nothing, you always have something to do when you're raising trees. I mean, now January, February might slow down a little bit, but you're always getting ready for, to start planting in the spring. And it seems like you never get through mowing or spraying herbicide or whatever you need to be doing, because you never run out of anything to do when you're raising a tree.
Yeah. Elizabeth, you want to tell us a little bit about your operation?
I am outside of Louisville, Kentucky. I am a second generation farmer. My parents started planting their first trees in 1985. We started harvesting in 1990 with Scotch pines, little bitty trees. I remember our trees when we first started selling them were $15. I am rebuilding, so I have more trees that I have to bring in versus choose and cut out of the field. I have just a very limited selection of trees and cuts. But I do the Norway spruce, the Canadian fir, concolor fir. It started back with white pines because I've had customers ask for it. But when we originally started, just like Dale, it was Scotch pines and white pines. We had Douglas firs, but I ended up with a fun. So that's about it. Oh, and I'm only 6 acres planting. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm only about 6 acres too. So I'm a small farm and I plant about 600 trees a year just to try to rebuild the farm back to where it was in the late 90s, early 2000s.
So could y'all tell us a little bit about the Kentucky Christmas Tree Association?
You got it.
We're small. Okay, we're small. We're a group that we try to meet at least twice a year. I am working on getting a Facebook page set up after this season, where we'll have more of reference sheets for people who are interested in coming and starting to grow farms, where to get your seedlings, pre-cut trees, shipping places, just trying to get as much information because I'm still learning. I lost my dad very suddenly before I was able to learn. I knew the business side, but the growing side is something that I'm still learning. And when they came out to the farm in September, I learned so much just by having other farmers here to kind of step in where I didn't have my dad to guide me. And that's with the Facebook group and trying to reach the younger generations or the younger people to get them just some information so that they know what they're actually getting into, because I had no idea. I would come out and help my dad, but I had no idea what all it took, and I'm still learning.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot to learn, and it's a great thing to have that association where you can kind of learn from one another and lean on one another. So it's really neat.
So once people actually get a tree from one of your all's farms, what do they need to do once they get it home?
Water.
That's the key thing. Huh?
Right.
I suggest not putting it up too early. Some people want to put it up in at Halloween and have it last till Valentine's Day. Well, that's not going to happen. But it's not putting it up too early. And like Elizabeth says, be sure it's got plenty of water on it and a good stand. I've heard of several stands ruining several marriages. So buy a good stand. Good stand, plenty of water. Don't let direct sunlight hit it. But common sense is a lot of things.
The other thing is with certain type of trees, they're going to drop needles no matter what. So once you get your tree decorated, don't keep messing with it because the needles are just going to drop. And it has nothing to do with, it's the type of tree. It's not the farm's issue. It is what it is as far as spruces are notorious for dropping needles once they're cut. Well, even when they're not cut, they drop needles.
So what is the optimal time frame of a tree being inside after you've cut it? You said don't get it too early and you can't keep it too long. So what is the optimal time frame?
I would suggest no more than 30 days. I mean, we sell the majority of our trees on Thanksgiving weekend. I know the trees stand up till, Christmas Day or past. So we don't get too many complaints unless it is a spruce tree. That's the ones we get more complaints on than any. And we try not to sell them till later in the season. But you can't avoid needle drop. And some, like Elizabeth says, some trees are just worse or harder to, their needle retention is worse than others.
Yeah, I think I could add a few comments.
Sure.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that I always advise people, my children are the people who run the business now, but I always advise customers to not put it close to a heat source. It was not uncommon that the person might put it, well, maybe close to a fireplace, or would put it around a heat, where heat comes into the room. That of course can dry the tree out more quickly. Some people like to have Doug trees, and you have a root ball on it, so that helps in some regard, but it decreases the likelihood that the tree may survive. But you still can do that, but you have to do the same thing: keep it away from heat sources and keep it well watered. It's of interest to realize that the Norway spruce used to be, to my understanding, a tree that was sold on cut lots in the 50s and maybe the 60s or something like that, but it had the problem that the needles would drop, and so it lost popularity. The spruces have been studied for needle retention. Well, all the pines and spruces have been studied for needle retention, and so there's various rates that are in the literature regarding that. The Norway spruce, about half of them are going to drop all of their needles if they're cut. Forgotten the exact date, but it's sometimes right before Thanksgiving and until New Year's. So you do have to anticipate that that's going to happen. The fresher the tree is, the less likely it is to happen. So the problem with the Christmas tree lots is that they were all cut in late October, November, whereas the advantage of a Christmas tree farm is that they can be cut, well, even later than Thanksgiving weekend. And so if they're cut later than Thanksgiving weekend, then that really favors the customer being able to maintain the needles and not have such a bad needle drop on it. But they're still beautiful trees and still well worth using.
I know I was going to say, my family and I always love a fresh cut Christmas tree and going out and selecting it. So thanks to you and all the different growers. But Renee, sorry, didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
I was going to say, it just seems like it would be a great family event, and you just said exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, you all can do I've seen some great agro-tourism efforts at some of these Christmas tree farms. So, we would encourage all of our viewers to, check out the Christmas tree farms near you. And we just shared in the chat pod the actual link so you can find, and I'm going to share that, Renee, real quick so people can see the website there. You all have the Kentucky Christmas Tree Farms, or Kentucky Christmas Trees Association webpage, and it's kychristmastreefarms.com. So there you can check out, where some farms are. You can find member farms here, and and many of them have their own web pages and own information. There's also some of that post care after you get the tree home, so you can check that out. But we'd encourage our viewers to check out KentuckyChristmasTreeFarms.com so they can find a Christmas tree farm near them.
I saw on there you got a countdown, 36 days, huh?
I think you probably, I think any customers, though, do need to realize that COVID is going to impact the operations this year, and Dale has spoken to that. But on our farm, we moved outside of our office, which was inside and all decorated and warm and pretty, to the barn that you saw on the video. So it'll be a little cooler, but at least it'll be under a roof, but they can social distance a lot better. And we also have the customers wear masks. And the other thing that is taking place that's trying to avoid congregations of people this year. So the places where they normally congregate, like around the baler or the shaker or places like that, there's things that are being done to try to disperse that group a little bit. And then the other place that happens is the hayride. People would, of course, congregate for the hayride, and that's a problem with the with the COVID advice to avoid groups. And it's not only the state advice, but also the insurance companies, or at least our insurance company, is concerned about giving recommendations along those regards. So I think anybody who's putting together an operation or customers who are coming out need to anticipate that they're going to have to deal with some COVID restriction generated new policies and new venues.
Yeah, so probably good advice to call ahead and check out with your Christmas tree farm of choice, and find out what they've got going on in their local farm. So Herb, Elizabeth, Dale, thank you all so much for being part of the show today and telling us about Christmas trees here in Kentucky. And again, we'll encourage folks to go out and find their own local Christmas tree farm and support the local economy the best you can.
Thank you for the visibility.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. All right, Renee, kind of keeping it going.
All right, moving on to our Tree of the Week segment.
I know, it's so fitting that Laurie Thomas does our weekly Tree of the Week segment. And Laurie, you've picked out one that kind of goes really nice with the segments that we've heard so far.
Yeah, conveniently, right? Picked out and the Eastern White Pine is the Tree of the Week this week. And as you heard from our tree farmers, it is one of the from our Christmas tree farmers, it is one of the trees that a lot of our Christmas tree farms have. So here you have the Eastern White Pine.
I'm Laurie Thomas with the University of Kentucky Forestry and Natural Resource Extension, and I'm here with the Tree of the Week, the Eastern White Pine. Eastern White Pine, Pinus strobus, is a valuable and versatile conifer. It is also called Northern White Pine. White pine is a fast-growing tree that's intermediate in shade tolerance. It is considered a relatively long-lived tree, commonly living to 200 years with about 450 maximum years of age. White pine is one of the largest of the northeastern conifers and commonly grows 80 to 100 feet tall with a diameter of 2 to 4 feet. Trees 4 feet in diameter and 150 feet tall were common in the virgin forests of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and New England. Young trees tend to be pyramidal and usually grow with one central leader, and the layers or whorls of horizontal branches give the white pine a distinctive appearance in middle and old age. Due to fast growth rate, it is widely used for timber, landscaping, Christmas trees, and reforestation purposes. Eastern white pine is native to the eastern United States and the eastern provinces of Canada. It is one of the 8 conifers found in Kentucky. It grows on most soil types in its range. It occurs on a variety of sites from wet bogs to moist stream bottoms to dry, sandy, and rocky plains. In the Appalachian Mountains, it can form pure stands on north-facing slopes and in coves. In addition to pure stands, it grows with mixed hardwoods as a scattered dominant tree. It is a major component of 5 forest cover types that include red pine, northern red oak, red and sugar maple, eastern hemlock, and chestnut oak. Eastern white pine is an evergreen conifer. Its leaves are soft, flexible 3 to 5 inch long needles that occur in groups or bundles of 5. The needles are bluish green in color, and they appear this color because there are several grayish blue lines of stomata, which are minute pores in the surface of the leaf, or the needle in this case. Typically, white pines will retain their needles for 3 years, with needles browning and dropping in the autumn of their 3rd year. Eastern white pine is monoecious. The male reproductive structures are cylindrical in shape, yellow, and in clusters at the base of the new branchlets. The females are light green with a slight red tint at the ends of the branches. The males are typically found lower in the tree crown, while the females are found in the upper portion of the crown. Flowering occurs in spring between May and June, and the flowers are wind pollinated. The fruit is a cone that's between 4 to 7 inches long. This cone is somewhat like a cylinder in shape and often slightly curved. The cone has rounded scales that are very resinous. Cones are green when immature and turn yellowy green to light brown when ripened late in summer. Most of the seeds are dispersed mostly by wind within a month or so of ripening. Gray squirrels, white-footed mice, and voles also disperse seed to a limited extent. Trees begin good seed production between 20 and 30 years, and good seed production occurs every 3 to 5 years, with a few seeds being produced in most intervening years. The cones will typically remain on the tree throughout the winter into the next spring. The bark on young trees is thin, smooth, and kind of a gray-green in color, and there's some lighter patches usually on it. As the tree ages and grows, the bark will become thicker, about 1 to 2 inches thick, and the bark will be broken into roughly rectangular blocks that are somewhat scaly on the surface. Eastern white pine heartwood is light brown with a slight reddish hue. The sapwood is a pale yellow to almost white. The softwood is of medium strength, easily worked, and stains and finishes well. The heartwood is rated moderate to low in decay resistance. Eastern white pine wood is used for construction lumber, especially in the Northeast. It is one of the 3 primary commercial species of white pine. The other 2, sugar pine and western white pine, are found on the West Coast. The wood is also used for crates, boxes, interior millwork, cabinetry, and paneling. Eastern white pine makes an excellent specimen plant or background plant for smaller trees because of its evergreen foliage. White pine is also planted for Christmas trees. The foliage has a good color and responds well to shearing. Eastern white pine is of fair wildlife value. There are several species of songbirds that eat the seeds, including yellow-bellied sapsucker, black-capped chickadee, white-breasted nuthatch, pine warbler, pine grosbeak, and the red crossbill. And there are several mammals that eat the seeds, bark, and foliage of white pine, and they include beaver, snowshoe hares, New England cottontails, porcupine, red and gray squirrels, mice, and white-tailed deer. Bald eagles build nests in living white pine, usually at the main branch located below the top of the crown. Trees with broken crowns provide cavity nesting sites, and young black bear cubs use large eastern white pines to climb to safety. The national champion eastern white pine is in Waldo, Maine. It's 245 inches in circumference, 125 feet tall, with a 78-foot crown spread. The Kentucky champion eastern white pine is in Edmonson County at Mammoth Cave National Park. It's 148 inches in circumference, 128 feet tall, with a 48-foot crown spread. If you'd like to know more about champion trees, check out American Forest Champion Trees or check out the Kentucky Division of Forestry Champion Trees. Now for a few fun facts about eastern white pine. Eastern white pine is the state tree of Maine and Michigan. The long, straight trunks of eastern white pine were once prized for use as ship's masts. The King of England had the biggest and the best white pines marked with the broad arrow for the British Navy, thus making it illegal for colonists to utilize those trees. This created tremendous anger and led to the Pine Tree Riot of 1772, which played a role in the events leading up to the Revolutionary War. Well, this is not necessarily a fun fact, but there are 277 different insects, and 110 disease organisms known to attack white pine. Fortunately, only 16 insects and 7 diseases cause sufficient injury or mortality to be of great concern. The 3 most important are white pine weevil, white pine blister rust, and root rot. The scientific genus name Pinus is the Latin name for pine, and the species name Strobus is from the Greek strobos, which means cone. Thanks for joining me to learn about the eastern white pine. I hope you get the opportunity to get out into your woodland, local park, or neighborhood and enjoy the wonderful white pine.
Well, thank you, Lori, for doing that presentation again for us this week. We always enjoy watching those. And again, folks, if you have any questions, type them in the chat pod. But Lori, one thing I was wondering, what's a good characteristic to identify a white pine?
Well, white pines, there's a couple, but definitely start with the needles. They're in groups of 5 or bundles, and we talked about, we've gone over some other trees like shortleaf pine where you've got needles in groups of 2s and 3s. So knowing the groups of 5, that's our one conifer that has needles in groups of 5, and the needles are really soft and that lovely bluish color. Most of our other pines that we have in the state, the needles are much firmer and they're actually kind of prickly on the end, whereas white pine's very soft to the touch.
Okay.
Another characteristic would also be the branching pattern. And I mentioned it in there talking about the whorling or the layering of those branches. And if you actually can get far enough back from a white pine, you can see that the branches will grow in a whorl all the way around the trunk, and then a next section, then the next section. So that's a really good characteristic. We don't see that on all of our pines. So that both of those would be good characteristics for identification.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for doing that. We greatly appreciate it.
No, the Tree of the Week's always a treat for us. So thank you, Laurie, again. And a big thanks to all of our guests today, Renee. We had another great show. We learned about American ginseng, and we learned about Christmas tree growing, and we got introduced to the Tree Farmer of the Year, Dr. Herb Lloyd. And I'll remind everybody on December 15th at noon, we'll have the Kentucky Tree Farmer of the Year virtual field day. So it'll be a chance to check out the rest of Dr. Lloyd's farm.
Right. And I just want to remind people too about our shows. And we have one coming up on December 16th. It's actually going to be the story of the Christmas tree. Lori Thomas and Doug McLaren are going to be talking about how the Christmas tree came about. So that'll be a very interesting segment. And I thought we could go ahead and promote that since we were talking about Christmas trees in the first place.
Yeah, very fitting. So look forward to that one as well. So again, folks, join us every Wednesday at 11 o'clock, and we'll join us at From the Woods Today. And again, you can check us out online. Any recordings are available. Renee and them do a great job of getting those posted pretty quickly. So
yeah, you can always check it out from thewoods.today.com, because I know we give you a lot of information every week. I know we say it every week, but we truly mean it every week, because we do give you a ton of information. So I know if you're anything like me, you'd like to go back and see the recording and go, exactly what did they say? So you'll be able to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. So folks, thank you all for being with us this week. We do appreciate it very much. And we'll look forward to seeing you on a future episode.
All right. Take care.
Bye, everyone.